Okay, my friends, here it is. The video that's going to explain to you the difference between chemical and natural fertilizers and why it's so important that we transition entirely to natural fertilization and soil husbandry. Okay, so let us just get into it and see where it goes. Now, if we are to understand this issue, which I get a lot of questions from you guys, so that's why I'm making this video. And if we are to understand the difference between the chemical and the natural fertilizers, we must first understand how a plant absorbs nutrients. Now, I know I say this a lot on this channel, but repetition is key, so just listen to it again. Now, if you put manure or a fish into the soil, or blood meal or bone meal or whatever nutrient it is, natural nutrient, then the plant cannot absorb that directly. The plant roots cannot absorb the manure, it cannot absorb the fish, it can't absorb the blood meal or any part of that. All of those organic substances must be first digested by the soil food web, meaning the bacteria and the fungi have to go in and start digesting it first. And then the protozoa and the nematodes will then eat the bacteria and the fungi. And then the arthropods and all of these they all eat each other, and every step along the way nutrients are unlocked so that the plant can then absorb what is the byproduct, the waste product, what all those organisms excrete, more or less, is what the plant absorbs. Okay, and the plants and these microorganisms have evolved alongside of each other for many countless years, and so the plants know exactly which microorganisms it needs in order to provide for it the exact type of nutrients that that plant needs. I mean, it's magnificent, the perfection that is involved in this. I mean, it defies comprehension, okay? So, when we put a manure or an organic matter into the soil, we have to give it time to be digested through the soil food web, and then it continues to feed the plants. So when you have thriving soil, it doesn't matter so much what plant you put into it. It's going to thrive because it will be able to attract and form relationships with the exact type of microorganisms that it needs to feed its needs. So now, that process takes time and it takes organic material. So the chemical fertilizers now, on the other hand, bypasses that entire process of the soil food web. And these chemicals, generally petroleum based, are created in a laboratory setting, and they are made in a form that is already directly usable by the plants, meaning it doesn't have to be digested by the bacteria and fungi, nematodes, and none of that stuff. It just goes into the soil and the plant can absorb it directly. Now, at first, that seems like, hey, well, great. We just cut out the middleman and we can just feed our plants, chemical fertilizers. But unfortunately, that's not how it works, because in the process of feeding the chemical fertilizers to the plants, you are bypassing the soil food web and therefore starving the soil food web. And so not only starving them of their food and their sustenance, but also directly killing them from the irritation and the salinity of the chemical fertilizers actually directly kills a lot of the soil microorganisms. So that each time and each season that you use the chemical fertilizers, after more and more of that, the plants become completely dependent on the chemical fertilizer, because it doesn't have that soil food web there. It's sending out the root exudates into the soil, trying to attract the microorganisms that it needs, but there's none there, or at least very, very few, not nearly enough to meet its needs. And so the plant will look sickly and it will need more of the fertilizer. And so some could say that this is by design. Yes, it's a very clever business model, but once you go down the route of adding the chemical fertilizers, you must continue with it, because you are actively killing and degrading the life that is in the soil. And this is nothing against you guys. If you have been using chemical fertilizers, this is no direct attack on you by any means. This is the system that has been given to you. We have been born into this system. Even my grandparents, they were using 1616 fertilizer, of course, or 2020 fertilizer. Or you add the nitrogen for the growth cycle and then the P and the K later for the blooming cycle and all of that. All of that has been implanted into the psyche of the modern world by the ag companies. The people that are profiting in astronomical amounts from getting the plants and the soil and the food system addicted to these chemicals, okay? It's very much like an opium for the plants. They become dependent on, at first, they grow up and grow really big and wow, everything's great and it's so luscious. I just dump 1616 on it and the garden explodes. Yeah, it's going to for a while, but that is only for your immediate short time span that you're using it. But the degradation that is happening because of that is what those that come after you will be left with. Do you see? And so each time you're using this kind of stuff, it degrades the soil more and more. And so what kind of things am I talking about? This is going to be any of the Miracle Grows. I know a lot of people, I dump Miracle Grow on it and it grows great. Yes, that is true. But at the same time, you're getting the soil dependent upon the Miracle Grow. The plants are dependent upon it. And after you've done, let's say you use your Miracle Grow for 5 years or 10 years, after you are done, that soil is going to be in a ragged state that is far more depleted and less giving of life than if you used the natural fertilization systems. You see? So Miracle Grow, Grow More, the Master Blend, any of the things with numbers on it that is like 16, 52, 10, or 12, 12, 12, pretty much all of those are going to be chemical fertilizers I'm talking about, petroleum based, and they're going to have, you flip them around and you look at the ingredients, it's derived from ammonium triple phosphate, calcium nitrates. All of these things are in the chemical forms, all right? This is where the saying, feed the soil, not the plants, comes into play. The chemical fertilizers feed the plant, bypassing the soil and starving and depleting the soil. Whereas the natural fertilizers feed the life that exists within the soil so that the plant can then have everything it needs. And so, what can we do about this? We can ensure that we immediately stop utilizing the chemical fertilizers that are destroying the life in the soil, and we begin using the natural fertilizers. Now, the natural fertilizers do not work in the same way. We don't dissect the plants into N, P, and K, or the nutrients into N, P, and K. We don't dissect the plants into growth cycle versus bloom cycle, really. I mean, some plants we can to a degree, but nature never does that. So we will make the fertilizers ourselves, and we will make balanced fertilizers that are, maybe they're predominant in one thing over the other, such as the fish fertilizer. It's more predominant in nitrogen, yes, but it also has a vast array and a good balance of many other nutrients. So when we look to nature, we see that nature never dissects its fertilization process. It provides a balanced nutrition all the time so that whenever the plant needs it, it's there. It's there when it needs it. And that's your job as the grower, the gardener, is to ensure that all the conditions are properly in place so that when the plant needs it, it can get it very easily. And it can reach the fullest extent of its genetic potential. So I urge you, resist the temptation to use anything like a Miracle Grow or any of that, because yes, you may get initial results, but that is not the way, my friends. That's not the way, okay? Our ancestors never used any of that, and they were the original sustainable agriculturists. Their life depended upon the soil yielding and upon it yielding for their children. And so we must go back to that mindset. And so we make all of our own fertilizers out of natural things that nourish the life in the soil so that each successive season, the land becomes more and more fertile, more and more giving of life. Thank you, my friends.